Guys, hi. Welcome to my first ever Substack Live. Really not sure how it works. Thank you for joining me and very much thank you for everyone who has sent questions in. A lot of the questions were very similar, which I expected. So I have kind of compiled them together. So I'll get through as many of these as possible. It'll be about 20 minutes or so. It's very, very informal, very relaxed. It will be uploaded as a replay. So if you have to jump out, please don't feel like you're missing anything. But what I really wanted to do with this Q&A, and when I set the topic of, pivot and reinvention, and I kind of set that topic, and then in the week or so after, I was like, oh, does the topic feel too, like when we think of reinvention, I think it feels, very grandiose, very before and after, like there's this big reveal. And I was like, oh, have I overshot it in a way? And when I thought about it, I think, there's a collective feeling. I notice when I feel something, I kind of look around. I'm like, is this just me or is it a collective feeling? And what I notice from comment sections, from clients that I work with, just from the general feel of things, especially I think with millennials at the moment, is there's this collective like unease of like what is going on in this landscape, in this digital landscape that's kind of forever changing. We're at this time where this kind of, we've got algorithm, we've got AI, we've got all these like ever changing landscape things that we likely probably have come onto Instagram at its beginning. We've kind of built a brand or a career or identity. And now it feels like everything we thought we knew is kind of out the window. And I think alongside that landscape change, there's also been, I have felt like a somatic change in ourselves. We're like, it's just kind of exhausting to continually having to pivot. So I think when I think about the topic, that's really what I meant. It's not this like big reveal of before and after, but kind of what does reinvention look like in these kind of smaller moments? And, if we're all feeling this, what does that mean? So a lot of the questions did reflect that, which I did expect. So let's go through these. The first question was, I noticed in March that you had stopped posting. I'm glad you're back now. Thank you. And what prompted the decision? I think it really wasn't a decision, to be honest. I think, so many people do over Christmas, New Year. I was like, oh, I'm just going to, in my mind, I guess, take 2 weeks off. It wasn't even really that active a decision, but I was like, I'm going to take 2 weeks off posting. I was still consuming social media, but I was like, I don't want to have to be documenting things. I don't want to have to be thinking about, what should I post? What does the algorithm want from me today? I just found it all like exhausting. And what I really found by stopping, because, the 2 weeks turned into 3 weeks, turned into 4 weeks, and then, 3 months, I was like, this actually feels really good. But what I found was, when we're in creator mode, as in content creator mode, it's very much a marketing mentality, right? Like we're thinking, how do we package the work? How do we get this to as many people as possible? How, in a way with the algorithm, I think, how are we manipulating the work in a way that it can get through this invisible gate wall thing that's here now and get it forward? So it's a really packaged mindset. And I think if you contrast that to a creative mindset, when we're in creative mindset and we're working on, a body of work or a project, the mindset then is more, it's more insular in a way, but like, what does the work want to be? What does the work need? What does the work need from me? How can I deepen the work? It's a very different thought process. And what I found in that time of not posting was that it really opened up my creative thought process more, which felt wonderful. So in that time, I was working on writing two manuscripts. So the first one, which we announced in the media recently, is a narrative nonfiction called Dopamining, which will be out early next year. And Dopamining, and while this isn't a book club chat, I'll just give you a very quick overview of it. But we were doing lots of chats on the book, obviously closer to the launch. But Dopamining for me came about because I noticed that I myself was saying, I want to do all these things. I want to write books. I want to write a novel. I want to write film. I want to do all these things. But then my behavior was, I'm just going to pick up my phone and I'm just going to scroll for a little bit. Or I'm just going to pop on the internet and, browse on Amazon. Or I'm just going to pour another wine. I'm going to do all these things that were not this. And they were very much this immediate gratification. I'm going to do this first and then I'll get to that. And obviously I was never getting to that. And so I was writing Dopamining the way that it's structured is very much a personal narrative. So here's my experience with it. And then I kind of went into a cultural observation because I'm like, if I'm feeling this way, others must be too. And so I started writing this book. And, in that time of not having to create content, it really allowed me to go deep into this work. And so alongside that then went to my editor. And then alongside that, I was writing a second manuscript, which is my first fiction work. So I'm working on a novel, which I'm actively in first draft of now. So taking that time off content creation really allowed me to I thought of the word and I was like, did it allow me to conserve my energy? But it wasn't conserve. It was more redirect my focus, I think is the best way to describe it, and stay in that creative mindset longer. Because when I think about this landscape that we're in, this ever-changing landscape and this feeling and this exhaustion, I think, from having to pivot to every change that happens in that landscape. When I look around, I don't think people are burnt out. Like I've experienced burnout before, and I don't think this is the burnout era. I think we felt that, post-girl boss era, post this kind of hustle culture. Because I think burnout suggests that we've done too much and we don't want to do the work anymore. Whereas I think I want to do the work. Like I have the ambition to want to do these things, but we're in this distraction economy that is completely vying for our attention all the time, if that makes sense. And so what I found when I was able to not be creating content and go deep into this creative work is that I stopped the hemorrhaging in a way, because I think when I talk about creative energy hemorrhaging, it's very much things that are pulling us away from the thing that we're meant to be doing, or that that we want to be investing our time and energy in. So, sorry, that was a really long way to answer this question, but it wasn't necessarily a decision, but when I did do it, the benefits I found in that time, I will answer this because in my mind, when I got to 5 months off, I'm like, I'm going to take a year off posting. And I came back online because Dopamining, our international team, are pitching it internationally, and it got picked up, which was wonderful for Spanish language rights. And they needed to announce that internationally because in publishing, it's originally an Australian publication. We had to announce that here first. So that's why I came back on. So it's a great reason to come back on, but I really did enjoy the time off posting. And I do want to preface that, I took that time off creating content as a writer working on long format work. I'm not, primarily a service provider. I'm not a product brand anymore. So I just want to, it's well and good to be like, just stop posting, create more. I understand entirely that is not possible for everyone at every time. But I will say if you can carve it out, it does allow such a different, uninterrupted way of thinking, I think was the best value from it. Next question was, I have been feeling completely drained by the pressure to constantly create content. How did you know it was time to step back, and how did you handle the fear that stepping back meant falling behind? I don't know if I have a good answer for this one, because I don't know. My feeling is that was kind of a mindset when the algorithm kind of became this new villain in our lives, right? I think there was chat that if you aren't producing content every day, you're going to get shadow banned, you're going to get blacklisted. And it's like one of those myths at school, that kind of perpetuates. I think the algorithm changes so frequently. What it pushes changes so frequently that if we're continually reacting to that, then we're just going to spend our lives in an absolute tailspin. Not just our creative work, our life will be spent in a tailspin if we're just trying to keep up with this robotic Wizard of Oz entity. So I know I don't want that to sound dismissive, because I really do understand the anxiety around it. But I think by and large, the algorithm is a distribution method, which is a marketing thought process, as I said before. The work can't be market if you don't have good work. So my advice here is focus on doing the work you want to do. Don't focus on, how am I appeasing the algorithm today, because that makes us, like a puppet on a string to create what the algorithm wants. I think we have to be creating the body of work that we want to be creating, and then think about how to market it. The Instagram, the internet is going to be there. I don't think the blacklisting thing, it might be a short-term thing. Don't quote me on that. I don't work at Instagram, but I would say don't let that rule your creative process would be my advice. Do good work, and we worry about the marketing after we've got the work done. I feel like I'm constantly chasing the algorithm and it's exhausting, but I also can't afford to ignore it. How do you decide where your energy actually goes? Again, I published an article on Substack the other day called um, we built careers on an internet that no longer exists. So I think, and especially again for people my age, for millennials, I think we're kind of in still this shock of like, hang on, I had the map, it worked, it used to work, and now it doesn't work. So I think we really have to get into the reality that that old era is gone. And I think even still calling Instagram and the others social media is quite a trick, because it started social, right? Like it started as in, if I post something, it will it will go to the community who has chosen to follow me. It's not like that anymore. That era is dead and gone. So I like to start calling it, it's interest media. It is designed to have something on there that I am interested in, and it's going to keep showing me those things because it wants to keep me on the platform longer. So I think we need to stop thinking that it is social media and it's not how it used to be. If we can put the algorithm, the villainous algorithm thought process aside for a second, there is actually a great democracy in that model, because, if it's designed to keep people on there, it's going to show if what you're creating, it's in the algorithm's best interest, in Instagram's best interest, to get that to the person who wants it. So I think if we look at it, if we reverse engineer the thinking that way, going back to our body of work, like what are we saying? What is the consistency in our work that will allow the algorithm to pick up on that consistency to deliver it to the people that want to see it? I hope that answers the question. The other thing that I will add to that is, and I've been saying this for so long and it makes me sound like a dinosaur, I know, but email is still so important. It's it's how we directly speak with our community. When people, hand over their email address, we have that direct line. We're not having to dance with the algorithm. So I think still investing heavily in your email acquisition and nurturing that relationship, making that really personal. Make sure you're not just sending out sales emails all the time. Make that a personal communication, and they've entrusted you with your email address. I think that's a huge responsibility. And I will say, I'm very new to Substack, but it was very much something that I liked about this platform, that when people sign up to your work, they opt in with their email, so you're able to directly speak with them. So I would say definitely be investing in your email acquisition. The next question: I do a lot of different things creatively and worry it looks scattered or unfocused. What is your advice on how to present yourself when you don't fit neatly into one category? That is a great question. And I feel like a lot of creatives are feeling this way now, because I think, we are pivoting and we are adding, more elements to what we do. I will say that I think a few years ago, my answer to this would have been very different to what it is today. So I think a few years ago, I would have very much been like, limit your slashes, build authority, pick a lane and build authority in that lane. I would say there is still, I think, value to that if you are just starting out. I mean, starting out in life and in career. So if you're quite young and starting a creative career, not so much authority that you need to build, but you need to build trust. This whole thing is about how are we building trust in what we're doing as a personal brand. So, but if you have, a bit of life experience behind you, if you have a bit of career experience behind you, And rarely is a creative not multifaceted, right? So what I think this time that we are in, again, in this new AI wave as an example. So pre-AI, if we look at, I'd say the content, the course, online course era, right? The value in the online course era was someone who had the information, whether it was theory, whether they'd lived it, if they could tell you the information, the what of it, that was valuable. Now we're in like an information abundance complete overload, right? You can jump onto AI and ask it. It'll tell you pretty much how to do anything. So it's essentially made the information piece without value. So if we say, all right, then where does the value come in? I think if we look now, it's the human element. It's the person who has done it. We want access to, all right, well, I have the information, but you know, I have how to do it, but what do I do with the information? So I think if we look at that differentiator now, especially in creative fields, that means the value is, what is your point of view? What is your perspective? What is your curation of it? What is, as a creative director, why do people want and trust how you see the world? So I think if we apply that thinking as the value differentiator, looking at not so much what we do, or, I think that's kind of a given. It's more, what's the thread that runs through? So, in this question, like, how do we pull that together as a branding mechanism? What is the thread that runs through all your creative silos? If you want to check out how I have tried to do this, my authorial site is samanthawills.com, and then I have Samantha Wills Studio, which is everything outside of my writing. So, if I look at that, I was a jewelry designer. I've designed product. I've done creative direction. I do interiors, which started as a hobby, then became for friends. Then now clients have me do their interiors. I do creative advisory. So that kind of, as a melding pot doesn't really make a lot of sense, but you've got to find that through line through it. That could be aesthetic, that could be point of view, that could be something that, has happened in your life that touches every piece of your work. But I think that's where we're at now in this multifaceted environment, is finding the through line of what makes up your body of work. I hope that answers that question. I am trying to finish my book. I feel you. But my days are full. I love writing when I carve out the time, but then weeks or months pass before I find that space again. How do you find inspiration, stay connected when everything else needs your attention? I feel like every single person who is writing a book thinks about this daily. I will say that I have completely de-romanticized the writing process. It's such an interesting career choice for me because I am the ultimate dopaminer. Like, I love a little dopamine sweet treat, like instant gratification, like that's my thing. So to be like, oh, you have to sit here and write an 80,000 word manuscript, and it's probably going to take you a year, and there's no high fives along the way for that. It's just you and your mind, and it's torturous. I don't know why I've chosen to do it. People are like, you enjoying it? I'm like, I don't enjoy it, but I enjoy having done it. I enjoy what it produces. So I think in this instance, I think that the key, and it's not about, if you have the luxury of a large block of time, like you've said here that you find a week or a month. And I know in the original question that you said you've taken time off to actually work on the book, which is amazing. And if you can do that, that's great. But what I think the key is staying connected to the work, because say you work on it nonstop for a month and then you're like, all right, well, I've got to go back to my real job. I'm not going to pick it up for 3 months. The disconnection, the job then is to get back into it, which is a job in and of itself. Aside from the writing, getting back into that work is really hard to do. So I would say try and stay as close to the work as possible. If you only have 15 minutes a day, 900 seconds a day, sit down and just write a few words on the page. It's showing up and just adding to it every day to stay close to the work. I think the other thing that I will say that has really, really helped me with my writing is when I finish the session for the day, in television writing, there's a thing called a beat sheet. So that would be just, bullet points of just key. It's not dialogue. It's not getting in depth. It's just here's the 5 things that need to happen, say in this episode. So if you take that TV writing format to your writing, it doesn't have to be fiction. It can be nonfiction as well, but very much putting that on tomorrow's page. So yesterday me, for my writing today, I've got 6 points that yesterday me wrote, and I show up and it's not a blank page. That has helped me so much because, showing up to a blank page is torturous in and of itself, but it removes that paralysis of what do I have to do today? It's very much, here's the roadmap. The job now is to connect that. So I would say stay close to the work and set tomorrow you up with just a few dot points makes it so much easier. And please write the book. It's important. I know you're in it. So please, please, please keep going. Sorry, I know we're running a bit over time. I feel like I am mid-pivot, mid-reinvention. How do you stay grounded when you're in between? Again, as I said at the start of this, I do think reinvention is such a big word. It's such a catastrophic word when we think of that. I think if we can de-escalate it a little bit and, it doesn't have to be baby out with the bathwater. I think there's ways that we can, let me reframe that. I think when I'm feeling that way, which I totally understand how you're feeling, I try and de-escalate it by getting out of my head, because I don't feel when you're going through these moments of change, you can think your way through it. I think for me anyway, that creates this more spiral of anxiety. So I would say, I say get your hands in the clay, get messy with it. So, you don't have to, it could be a Canva doc, it could be, a Substack that's on private, it could be a Squarespace that's on private, but start building in the background of what you think the reinvention might look like. Because I think once we can't think our way into a reinvention, it's something that has its own heartbeat. And, I use the concept of composting a lot. It's like, if we have the idea, where are we planting that? And how are we co-creating with that? So getting that out of our head, I think, is the first step, and getting it into, be it a document, if you're tactile, getting it down on paper, but really, building out what the dream looks like. And even the question before about how to bring those different silos of your creativity together so it looks more cohesive, like start to play around with it, because it's not an exercise that can be done and be like, all right, I did that, tick that off. It's a breathing, living, heartbeat exercise that requires time. It requires the composting process. It requires us to walk away and come back and be like, you know what, that just doesn't feel right. I'm going to move this around. I'm going to play with the words. Like it's a time process. So I think feeling grounded for me is definitely getting out of my head about it. And to me, that's getting hands in the clay, meaning start working on it in the background and see what it wants to become. Because I think we can maybe have an idea, but once we start putting it into motion, it's the motion that brings more clarity into it. I truly feel that clarity comes through doing. I feel like I need to reinvent myself and my brand completely, but the idea of starting over is paralyzing. How do you know when it's time for real change versus just a rough patch? I think a lot of people would be feeling this way at the moment. As I said, people are like, what, tell me what to do and I'll do it. Like, where do I put my energy? I think in this case, it can, and especially when there's 2 changes, as I spoke about before, there's the landscape change and then there's this change in us, this somatic change. So if you overlay 2 types of change at the same time, it can feel like it's all broken. Let's burn it down and start again. Listen, that might be the case. I don't think it is. I think the differentiator here, I would say, is, does this just feel hard right now, or does this no longer feel like me? And I think if you can sit with and answer those really, really honestly, because if it no longer feels like you, which is totally fine, and it could be the case, then that is a case for kind of going back to the hands in the clay process. Well, what does feel like me? What does a pivot here look like? What might a reinvention look like? And a reinvention doesn't have to be like, I had the idea yesterday, guys, I'm reinvented, here's the new me today. Like, it can be a process over time. And, I can use myself as an example there. I closed the Samantha Wills jewelry business in 2019. it's now 2026 and I feel like I'm just starting to be like, okay, this feels like what fits for me. But that has been an amount of time of trying things and putting my hands in the clay and seeing what feels right. I don't know if it's commercially going to work, but it feels right to me. So that's the question I would be asking myself there is this hard right now, or does this no longer feel like me? And I think that's a good differentiator. One more question. Sorry, guys. This will be replayed if you have to run. I don't feel like I've ever found my purpose as others talk about it, but I feel I'm meant for more. What advice do you have on unearthing that? Oh, that's a big one. I would say, what are you curious about? Elizabeth Gilbert talks about curiosity a lot, but what are things that pique your interest? What are you talking about with your friends? What if you had to give, a keynote, would you be like, oh yeah, I can talk on it? It can be anything. Like what are the things in your life that interest you? And I think if you start to layer those together and take those things and start putting them into a messy document, start putting them into Canvas, start building out a website that no one else needs to see, but it's like, what might that look like as your purpose? And I'm answering this as if this person is asking purpose for a profession. But I think that, there's I truly think that answers come to us when we're in motion. It's like giving something to a busy person. That's when it gets done. And I think when we're in motion, when we have our hands busy creating, imagining, we open up this portal, which sounds so woo-woo, but like a portal in our mind that, attracts more ideas. It attracts the next solution to that. And I would say, like, go into keeping your eyes up and around. What is interesting to you? Follow the rabbit holes, not the social media rabbit holes, but the rabbit holes of what feels like something that lands with you. And even asking your friends, I think, is another good one. Like, get your friends to describe what they think for you and see. And you don't have to take it as gospel, but there's often some good bits in that. If you are open to using AI, I totally appreciate many people aren't, but I would say this could be a good exercise, especially with Claude. I think ask Claude to interview you. Tell Claude this question. Get it to interview you to find what it might brainstorm. I really think it's an excavation process, but I really do think that this one starts with curiosity. So that's all the questions. If anyone had questions to today's topic, please email it through sw@samanthawills.com, and I will be sure to answer them and put it up with the replay. I'm going to try and do these every month or every other month. So if there is a topic that you guys want to chat about, please send it, DM it, email it, however ways you can contact me. But I really appreciate the community. I know the community on here, the community that writes back to the emails. I really appreciate you guys, and I'm really excited to show you a few things that are coming up in the next few months. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.